that had what I refer to as a ChatGPT moment.
I think between NotebookLM and a Perplexity page, we can get a pretty good analysis of whatever topic our show is about.
Now, just think how quickly we could spin up knowledge in a NotebookLM.
Well, NotebookLM makes that ancient history as it is already.
But you still got to be careful, because I think we all know Gemini and Google AI hallucinates quite a bit.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is October 11th, 2024. You're listening and watching the Daily AI Show Live, and today we are doing our every other Friday deep dive into a tool. And today we're going to be talking about Google's NotebookLM. We'll talk about some use cases, how you can use it for business, what we really love about it, their sort of viral sensation of their recent sort of podcast, I guess you would say, feature they have on there. You've probably heard it. We've added it to our newsletters. So it's definitely been out there, but that is not the only trick that NotebookLM has. In fact, it's actually really, really helpful for a couple other things you might be working on with business. And best part about all this is it is currently free. You can use it up to a certain level. And pretty much any business or anybody can use it to start with. So with us today, we have Jyunmi, Beth, Karl, Andy, and I'm Brian. And with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to you, Beth, to get us started, if you don't mind. To just sort of talk about, Google LM, obviously NotebookLM rather. We've been using it for months, but it definitely is sort of had its time in the sun, I would say, over the last 2-3 weeks. So maybe you can help our audience understand maybe why that happened.
So one of the things that happened, I think, with the bump that just recently occurred, so now everybody is talking about NotebookLM, is that the podcast, or what they call the deep dive conversation that you can generate, which is that two-voice podcast that you may be hearing a little bit of, and you're likely to hear a lot of as things roll into the future, that had what I refer to as a ChatGPT moment, right? It is a way to interact with AI and AI data, and that is familiar, easy, and super shareable, but understandable, right? So you can share this, and it's not like I built it with AI, so it has a ton of weird words in it, or it sounds really AI, or it's obvious in that kind of way. One of the things that I think is true about these the podcast pieces or the deep dive conversations is that even though it's AI, it's satisfying to listen to. Now, if you listen all day, definitely there's going to be patterns going to drive you nuts. So use sparingly. But the other thing that they did is recently they added the ability to include YouTube links and audio as part of your source. Previously, it was text-based sources. But text-based sources did include PDFs with images, right? So you could have a PDF with charts and graphics, and one of the use cases that I found did a bunch of that. So while yes, we talked about this on the Google Labs episode a couple weeks ago, there's been more added since then. And the other thing that I'll say to lay out the conversation is that this was Google acting like a startup. This is a small team that chose to launch something before it was ready. I mean, honestly, it was launched a year ago. We enjoyed it, but it was not something that really seemed to do a bunch of unique, amazing stuff. But because it was a small team, when it hit and it started to get a ton of use, they made changes in a rapid sprint-like fashion, and they're listening to what people want. And it is one of those, I find it very exciting. The creators or the people at Google have done podcasts in the last couple of days, so we'll include links to those notes as well, so you can hear what their future ideas are, what the experience was in creating it. It is a tool that's being used inside Google and they're getting internal feedback that this is amazing and has changed Google's workspace, team workspace, right? So I'll stop there. Who else has something that they want to say? I just wanted to lay that.
I'll just comment that what made it really burst onto the scene recently, I think, even though this NotebookLM has been around for a while, as a, like a knowledge store, you can place documents in it and create collections and so on, was within the Google Labs or Google Experiment space. There were two products, NotebookLM and another one called Illuminate. Illuminate is the Podcastify functionality. You basically put documents in, you click generate, and it creates this really satisfying back and forth between a male and female voice that are having a podcast review of all the information that you provided it. So when that was plugged into NotebookLM, which people were already using as a knowledge store and putting them together, suddenly the availability of the podcast crew telling you about your knowledge base was a breakthrough.
Right.
Yeah, and I wanted to pull this up on the screen. Sorry, I was reading the comments as this was coming up. So I wanted to pull this up on the screen because Beth, you mentioned this has been around for a year, and of course it's probably been around longer than this. But if we just look all the way down in the come on, mouse, in the bottom right hand corner here, actually these are example notebooks, not something I created. And you can see if you look all the way down the bottom, this Westward Mushrooms one is from November of 2023. So even their first example in here is going back, almost a year, right? Not quite a year in there. And then Mugifier Documents. I feel like is that a Harry Potter? What is a Mugifier? It sounds like a Harry Potter thing to me. Jyunmi, is it?
That's immediately what I thought too. I thought it was a Muggle thing for sure.
It's like,
no, it's about mugs.
It's literally about mugs. Yeah, that's
like coffee mugs.
Yeah, too many mugs. Finally tried it. Ideas for transforming into mugs. Transforming into mugs.
Are you experiencing mugification at this very moment?
I get invention of the light bulb. That sounds like a very easy, use of Google.
Right.
Which is something we could certainly talk about today, which is for education, right? This is a great tool for, as you can see, if we go in here, we can actually go to Notebook Guide, which is really sort of I want to say the newer side of NotebookLM, but not the first part I was using. I was just doing what you see here, where you're putting in some documents on the left-hand side and then simply just asking, like a RAG system, just asking against those documents, hey, what about this? What about that? So great as a study tool. But if you go into the Notebook Guide, and funny enough, they're grayed out. I wonder if because this is an original idea that these aren't available. But anyway, on a normal one up here where it says study guide, you could actually make a quick study guide of that. In fact, we can see that if I go back to one of our most recent ones, you'll see that they're all available here at the top. Now, in this particular case, what did I do? I threw in a whole bunch of different show transcripts. Yeah, this is the Showbot one that we were trying back in May. But you can see even from there, I can do study guides and different things. If I just hit study guide here, it'll create a new one, and then you can learn off of it. Of course, there's other things you can do, but just wanted to show that really quick and show that, I guess we were looking at it back in May, but obviously it has been around, as a lot of these AI tools do. Usually they're around before they make the public eye or they meet the public eye and stuff like that. So just wanted to share that really quick. And when that comes back and generates, I can always bring it back up on screen.
So when I started using NotebookLM, of course, blown away at being able to quickly analyze and look at, a bunch of sources at once. So of course, in education, just studying about a particular topic, you're putting all of your sources in there and doing an analysis and getting your top 5, your top 10, then being able to do a deep dive, adding those audio elements. So there's a lot of different mnemonics that you can absorb the material. That makes a lot of sense. Now, I was thinking for our own personal use cases, or I should say for DAS, I think between NotebookLM and a Perplexity page, we can get a pretty good analysis of whatever topic our show is about, right? We use that as the basis. It gives you an analysis of what the episode's about. It can go further into that topic specifically, give you some more information, cited sources. And so if you really want to know about NotebookLM, you can go to our NotebookLM and our Perplexity page about this episode and learn everything you need to learn. So I think there's an opportunity there for any content creation side of a business or a media or program, even maybe a little more in depth about what your company does, right? Let's say you're into material sciences and that's kind of what your company's working on. You can talk about whatever, announcement that you wanted. It's more than just an announcement. You can talk about whatever new material or methodology that you're working on. Maybe you release some new scientific research, talking about Illuminate. It was original function was to take research papers and break it down into audio form or podcast form so that you could absorb it easier. So I think if any business wants people to understand what they do, or at least what they're talking about or creating, this is an excellent tool to be able to expand on that and have people quickly dive in. Oh, okay. Would they want us to know this? Oh, I wanted to know about that new, material that they were creating, or, whatever use example you want to plug in. Oh.
Yeah, and I want to bring Gwen's comment really quick because it's right on with what you just said, Jyunmi. She said, it helped me get someone into AI as she's studying to be a trailhead. Now, Beth, trailhead means Salesforce. Is that correct? Trailhead, right?
Correct.
I want to make sure I was right on that. So a great example, Gwen, of, using Google LM to throw in a couple of documents, like Jyunmi was just saying. One other way you could definitely use this is it doesn't necessarily, this could be a business related, but I'm going to give you a personal example of this, but it would apply to business just the same, is not everything we do is long-term studying or long-term thinking. Sometimes, well, many times, we need to quickly spin up and then spin down research. It happens all the time in life. I will give you the exact example. So I could use anything for Hurricane Milton and putting up shutters and figuring out how to do that. By the way, the shutters gave you a CD-ROM, and when you put this, first of all, you had to have a place to play the CD-ROM. That tripped up a lot of neighbors, and then it was a video from the 1990s, which was hysterical, on how to put up the shutters. That's a whole different story. But I'll just use my cars as an example. I have a Chevy Bolt, 2019 Chevy Bolt. It is, the wheel will shutter sometimes. Okay, I am a massive fan of Facebook groups for things like this. Yes, that probably makes me old. I'm okay with that. I love a good Facebook group because you just have a whole bunch of people in there who are highly niched down to whatever it is you want. And in this case, there's owners of Chevy Bolts, right? Go figure. There is, because of regenerative braking, yada, 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 there is some sticking of a caliper piston on the brake. Now, I am not a gearhead. I'm okay with cars, but I am certainly not a person that's going to tinker a lot, especially with modern cars. I stopped that in the 80s when an engine was an engine and ice was an ice. So I'm not somebody that's going to tinker around, but because of this group, I was able to quickly figure out that the shuddering I was getting on my wheel was probably coming from that. Now, just think how quickly we could spin up knowledge in a NotebookLM. Let's say I have people in that Facebook group that are sharing blogs, sharing YouTube videos, sharing whatever, because people do all the time. They're like, here's a quick video on how to fix that or whatever. But I may not be on a Saturday where I'm going to go tinker with this or go to AutoZone to go get the lubrication, brake lubrication that I need for this particular solution, right? But I don't have to. It's kind of like now I can go grab those right from the Facebook group, just put them in a Google LM, a NotebookLM, and hold them there. And then when I'm ready, I can now go ask questions directly against the YouTube transcripts, directly against the blogs, or maybe I have to copy and paste at worst case scenario, because you can do that too. And so this is something that's like, I don't need to know this forever, but I need to know it maybe for this weekend. But I might have been working on getting that knowledge for 2-3 weeks before I applied it. So that's just a personal use case where they would be very, very helpful of consolidating knowledge of information for me and sharing it with other people who might need to be sped up. For instance, I could quickly take this to a mechanic and say, this is what I know so far. I'm pretty clear up to this point. I now need your expertise. But now look, we have this resource we can use together. You can do it with doctor stuff as well. But any of these examples would apply to business because there's 1,000 ways or reasons why you might need to quickly spin up and know something in a company, but it's not something you need to know forever. And I think a NotebookLM could be a fantastic tool for something like that.
I completely agree. Internally, this is a fantastic tool.
Yeah.
So can you just imagine your IT staff going, oh, you need to know everything about our governance policy. This is why we do all of these procedures. Well, here you go. Here's our NotebookLM. It has all of the sources together. You don't have to go searching through an FAQ. You don't have to go looking through all the documentation. They've already pre-built it for you, and you've got a bunch of different ways to absorb the information, whether it's directly reading, the study guides, the analysis, and listening to the podcastified version of the content.
Well, there's a limit to that. There's a limit to that, though, in the sense that I don't see a collaborative approach to NotebookLM yet. It's not a feature that you can have a group in a notebook. You can do this as you described, and then place the recording and place the summary and place the guide out on another location that's accessible to everybody else. Or you could kind of kludge it and say, okay, we're going to use a sort of a group a Gmail account here. And if you want to go into our collective company repository and see some of these data, then you can log into that Google account. But that's really cumbersome. So what is this is primarily right now a tool that can generate these really satisfying aggregations of data and then present them in a digestible form. But it's primarily been designed for individuals as a research assistant, in effect. Like this is, you remember back in the old days, if you're going to write well, maybe you don't remember this part, but you used to do a research paper using index cards. Why? Because you put all the things that you collect from your source. You write down the source as a citation at the bottom of the index card, and you basically digest or summarize what it is about that particular source that you want to include. And now you've got this stack of cards, and you can reorganize them in the sequence that you want to present in your paper. Well, NotebookLM makes that ancient history as it is already. Okay. You could put the documents as you collect them into the NotebookLM, and then you can have a dialogue, with the assistant there that could collect those and reorganize them into a sequence of presentation that you like. But I don't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a way that inside a company you could use a NotebookLM account to do this collective process. Instead, you'd have to have the IT department, as you said, Jyunmi, build it and then present it somewhere else in the Google system. It could be in the Drive, for example, and you could navigate a series of things.
Yeah, you can just share the NotebookLM.
Yeah, it's right. Just like a Google Doc or a sheet.
Yeah, exactly. But that's somebody has to do it and then share it, right? It's not that it's a shared space in which you can do a NotebookLM collection and then have all the presentation features available collectively.
Yeah,
I get where you're going with that, Andy, because I presented this as just it wasn't even a you should use it, more of a, hey, it's like a novelty idea for several businesses. And I think when you do that, I think especially for some enterprises or bigger businesses, they kind of want it in their own ecosystem. So they don't want a one-off, which I feel Google's probably going to integrate this into Workspace for the broader offerings, because it's not, I don't think it's part of that right now, or it's not like part of the group. So you can like share it and you can add people, to who you want to edit it and so on. So, but right now, like, yeah, it's just not part of something. Like, it's not like part of, if this was a Microsoft thing, it'd be part of Copilot, no questions. It would be part of the Copilot experience and then Workspace experience, but this is kind of its own deal. So I can see where, because when some enterprise, oh, that's so cool, but that was it. It was like, I even asked, like, are you planning to use this? So I'll use it myself personally, but it's not like, I think it's like company-wide, like how could you make this more mass adoption unless there's somebody who actually, runs the pilot, scales it, everybody likes it, or it's part of the package or something. But it's easy to share it, but across a business, it's one of those, like, I'll share it with a couple people, but to get the business adoption, it needs to be part of a package, I think, which I think Workspace will have it.
I think right now it's an easy lift to go from here's how we do our FAQs now to here's a different version of the FAQ, right? Most of those are still created manually. Those are aspects like a Zendesk or something like that. So that's how I'm imagining is we get these kinds of questions. We're just going to create a notebook LM of it. You go ahead and have access to it because it's accessible to everybody on our domain, or something along those lines.
Very, very selfishly, we've built a lot of internal digital assistants. When I saw this, NotebookLM has actually been, like you said, it's been off for a while, but to have that presence is like, So all I know is like those things that we built that we continue to have maintenance fees on are, and we kind of knew this, it was coming, like the end is kind of coming. Depends on the adoption of this. Then, like, it's weird because it's like you have to know about it. Then in addition to knowing about it and know how to use it, and then how do you deploy it to your business? Like outside of having a consultant or having someone who's really into AI place it out, that would be the question. Again, selfishly for me, there's one thing that I just want to make sure that we cover here, though, is I know everyone is excited about the audio overviews, but you guys still got to be careful because I think we all know Gemini and Google AI hallucinates quite a bit. And I did a test this weekend. I put 3 different docs in, put a YouTube video in, a couple of things. I would say 80% is generally okay, but when it got to some, it would take what it thinks is the most important pieces, but it may leave out some high level stuff that you would like to put in, and sometimes the numbers and things that you think that it sounds really good, but it's not. So there is hallucinations in there, and I think people have to be very careful about, hey, here's the podcast, here's summarizing our document or whatever this report is. Like, I hope you listen to the entire thing, like whether it's 8 minutes, 50, whatever it is, because it sounds good, but just like any AI, and this is very, very susceptible to hallucination, and even says at the very bottom, may sometimes give inaccurate responses. So you got to confirm. You better listen to that thing before putting it out, because it's not on. Yeah.
I'm curious on this. I have not tried this, but you definitely make me want to try this. Because I know how important like Markdown method and also just good organization of an outline is. Given 2 different, let's say YouTube videos, two different transcripts from YouTube video, and given that one of them is just the literal transcript, right? And we're asking Google LM to determine the most important parts of it, or taking the transcript, and if we had either used a Claude or a GPT or just manually did it, and we actually put a new document in with headers, like H1, H2 headers, I wonder if it will pull, I would imagine it would, by the way, this is my hypothesis, is it actually would pull the H1 and H2 headers and re-emphasize them as top points when it's creating the podcast. Because that's basically the way an LLM works as well. It's going to look at those headers as points of reference, right? That's why a good breakdown document is so important.
I'm assuming that this is like when you have a link. Yeah, the assumption is you put a link to the YouTube channel and then it does the transcript. Unless this thing, I'm not sure, is multimodal. I don't know how it's extracting YouTube, but that's a very fascinating thing. So it'd be neat to see okay, you have one Notebook LM just for the YouTube like link, and then another one where you've actually done the markdown of a transcript and see what the output is and see what it says. Like that'd be a neat experiment to see. Oh yeah, one last thing too. I know I just feel it because I've started seeing a lot of people do it. Marketers are going to ruin this to no end because they're just going to start posting stupid Notebook LMs audio into like as part of their content. And it's just because it's so easy, right? It's like, I'm going to put a bunch of documents and here's my podcast. I'm going to do it every week. And it's like, no, it's like, but it's the same two voices. So everybody knows that that's not real.
Right.
And I'm just hoping it's like, please don't do that. Please don't. Don't.
Matt Wolf talked about that on a video, maybe last week, because he did a whole thing about Notebook LM. And he's like, I kind of feel like, he was joking. He was like, I kind of feel like I'm watching the end of my YouTube thing. And, his point was like, if it can be done so easily, and, we had people talking in the comments too, it did kind of jump that uncanny valley a little bit, which sometimes we don't see. It's like, it's so natural that yes, it's AI, but it's like, oh God, it's like watching, any of the latest, video stuff for like Sora or whenever. You go, oh wow, that is a step ahead, right? That's better than anything else I've heard. But what I was going to say to that is, my answer to this is like the answer to everything with AI or anybody on LinkedIn that's using these highly, highly automated, just junk processing, volume over quality type AI solutions. And on LinkedIn, as you would imagine, LinkedIn's actually responsible for some of it themselves. But regardless, it's just high volume, not quality, high volume junk, right? Sure, I can respond to every single commenter, blah, blah, blah. It's just not going to be great. And so my answer to all of this is, as businesses, if we bring it back to a business use case, what I would be saying is, okay, what do we have that doesn't really matter if it has Brian's personality or Beth's personality or Karl's personality on it, that has to just be translated in another medium, voice or whatever, that's entertaining, that helps people catch on to the ideas, that's going to help us to, put this information out there. But it doesn't have to have the personality of a person. Okay, great. That might be a solution today or in the near future for a Notebook LM, because you're just trying to give your employees, or if it's externally facing, your customers, a different way to consume information. And for that, it's phenomenal. And then you're going to have stuff where you say, hey, we actually want Brian or Karl or Andy to bring in, I'll use Andy, to bring in, 30 plus years of experience and what Andy did in the beverage industry and other places. And we want that background knowledge to come in so that when Andy is doing his presentation, he might quickly jump off to a quick story to help solidify that idea. And that's going to be something that only Andy could do. And so we want to use Andy for this. He's the best use case for this particular knowledge transfer. But businesses will have choices in the future. They will have choices on whether they want to do it the AI route for efficiency's sake, for speed, and it'll be great. It'll be fantastic for that. And then there'll be other ways where we're not going to replace the Andys of the world because we need Andy and his, 30 plus years of knowledge and his ability to have a worldly view of what he's experienced. And we need that as part of our information. And we wouldn't want to replace Andy with AI. And businesses will have choices, I think, which is actually kind of cool. So I don't think it's going to replace anybody, but it is going to make it easier to get knowledge out multimodal and different ways to do that.
So one of the use cases for this is using it to explain very complicated data. One of the Mike Nichols wrote a post on X about a technical submission that had been something submitted to them. It was a very technical app or a very technical service, and hard to understand what was happening. And the people who submitted their deck with a generated podcast of it using NotebookLM, and it was a game changer in that context, right? So if you have a service that you're offering that is hard to explain, NotebookLM can, first of all, help you explain it, right? Like put all your documentation in and then say, hey, talk to me like I'm 5, right? Talk to me like I'm in 5th grade. Give me the synopsis of what I do, right? That's one thing. The second thing is that you can share that. And as was talked about in the comments, you can actually share it so that they're a viewer, not an editor of it. If you want to share the whole notebook that is essentially your pitch deck, right? I mean, imagine you're sending someone a pitch deck that has an audio summary that you've generated. So you've made sure that it's correct. Definitely make sure that it's correct. Don't send the first one it gives you without double checking that kind of stuff. And the information that you want it to have, and then it can function as this interactive pitch, right? And I'm not saying that they make decisions based on that, but that is, right now, that's sort of a unique position to offer. And it is one of the things that AI is creating as valuable for business people, right? Whether you're a solopreneur or much larger like SME, you are always still needing to conserve the amount of time that you can interact with people with the amount of knowledge that you need to give people to be able to use your service or understand what you offer and that kind of stuff. And this is something that can do that. I also want to say quickly that there have been questions in the chat about whether you're going to be able to interact with the hosts, whether like voices will change, that kind of stuff. That's coming. They've already, the team has already come out and said, yes, that's on its way. But the other thing is that there is, if you really want to dive deep into this, go to the NotebookLM subreddit. I know Reddit is like scary for some people. It's okay. You don't even have to comment. You can just read. And if you go to Perplexity and you have the plus or the pro, you can choose the focus of social media, and that's search Reddit. So like you don't even have to go to Reddit to get the Reddit. But NotebookLM, they're sharing all kinds of tips. And one of the things you can add is a director's note if you want to create a series. So you have resources or like a book club. That's one of the ideas, is that somebody put together basically simulated book club discussions. So you did something on each chapter, right? You can do episode notes if you want to try to emphasize where the conversation is going to go. So those are things that are not perfect, right? Again, it has a hidden system prompt, so it knows how it wants to interact with you. And what you are asking it to do is like, yeah, but that's nice. I know, like that's really, but I think it would be fun if you played over here like this. So that's always going to be attention. And to back what Karl was saying, this is a great use case, something to explore. It can give you great feedback. There are a ton of use cases. If you want something that's performing consistently, Karl's service is not in danger, right? We don't have the system prompt for this. We can't get in and tweak it. You can't see the things that people are asking, right? Like none of that. There is no data coming back to you about how to refine this experience for your user.
Which is kind of neat too, because it's like, so, the first thing when I showed this to a company is like, hey, can we change their voice to our voice? I think that's probably a most common thing. It's like, I don't want to listen to these two. We think our audience wants to listen to us. That's one. Two, can we ensure that they do this, and how they do it? It'd be curious to know if Google actually adds all those pieces in, right? It's like, hey, we can change this, do this, because then NotebookLM maybe takes the backseat to the actual podcast system itself. So be curious how they're thinking about it. Be like, oh, we can actually have you create your own podcast like separately, and being able to edit all this stuff that you want the show to be about, not just your data, like, make stuff up. Because there's a whole bunch of examples about like people fed it like questioning their existence. They're actually like they're actually AI and all that. That's all that fun stuff. So,
Karl, I want to go back to your point about it sounding like us, because I actually is exactly what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to bring in Jude's comment, because Jude's joking and he's like, I needed to sound like Darth Vader, which, I mean, let's be honest, that would definitely be cool. Also, I think it'd be hilarious just talking about the two voices that are there. Beth, you do improv. I would love to get the transcript of one of your most absurd improvs on stage and then translate it into this podcast so that they had to talk about it seriously. And so it was a flying chair, but they're like, get this, it's a flying chair. And she's like, tell me about the flying chair. You know, that kind of, I think that would be hilarious to take an absurd topic and then try to make it sound serious on the podcast. But actually, all that aside, that silliness, this is actually a potential problem. Okay, let's bring it up on the stage real quick here, and let's just play a very quick clip.
Today we're going to take a deep dive into something pretty wild. You know how tech is changing the world of crime fighting. We got this white paper you sent about this data platform called SUS, and it seems like it could be a
waiting for the female voice. Okay, the reason I wanted to bring that up really quick is that I think most people would agree that, well, they sound a bit like me. What I mean by me is I'm a white guy, you know, and it's like they try their best to be sort of a nondescript voice. But listen, those two voices are sort of right down the middle. This is a problem. And by the way, I'm not knocking Google that they didn't come out with 42 voice options. Okay. But it is something that if this tool is being used more, they're definitely going to have to, I hope, give more serious attention to. And that this is a problem in that if people start relying on this as a verified way of sharing information, whether it be in business or otherwise, and this is the style and tone of the voices that you're hearing as the voices of authority, we're going backwards. Because once again, we're going to get to a place where the AI is sort of this smoothed over voice that sounds a whole lot more like me and people, you know, that I grew up with than it necessarily does of ethnic voices or multicultural or whatever, which actually is a problem. How many times have we, you know, seen an actress or an actor or a musician come on and say, I didn't even know it was an option for me to be in this field or create this thing until I saw such and such person do it before me. I didn't even know I could do that. I didn't even know it was an option. I'd never seen anybody look or sound like me who did this thing. Right? We know how important that is. So it's going to be important, not just with Google LM, but AI in general, that we ensure that there's a variety of styles of voices. And then also who decides which one is the one that's going to be shared out, or does the end user get a choice to do that? And I'll bring up an app that, if you know Will.i.am, it's called FYI FYI, like for your information. And he put out, well, he's part of a group that put out this app. And he said on one of the talk shows, hey, one of the reasons I did this is because AI doesn't sound like me and the people I grew up with. And I want it to sound like me. I want to sound like my people, you know? And I think it's a real conversation to be had. As much as I think this is cool and it kind of jumps that uncanny valley, the problem with it is that it sounds a little too much like me.
So that's one of the things that I find really interesting, because that was one of the things that I was looking for. Can the voices be changed? And we know 11 Labs you can upload audio and it will change the voice. But the main function of the dubbing feature is to change it into another language. So I could change the summary that I got into two voices speaking Spanish really easily. I cannot right now really easily change the voices to people who sound like they are, let's use Aaron. I can't easily make it fine. To keep everything the same, I just want them to have an Australian accent, right? And not like an American version of an Australian accent. Like, actually, Australians would think, yeah, no, those are Australian people having a conversation. That kind of stuff, that kind of like colloquialism translation and slight accent that isn't a caricature is a gap in the field right now. That is not an easy thing to find. And actually, Cisco, I think it was whoever it was who wanted Darth Vader. That's also not necessarily easy because that's a copyrighted voice, right? Like we can create copyrighted art much more than we can create copyrighted audio.
But we do know Disney has access to it now because we know that James Earl Jones gave it access to it. So who knows if Disney will come out with an LLM or something like that where you can in fact talk to Darth Vader. But yeah, Beth, I 1,000% agree. I know we all do. You know, Jyunmi, you've talked about your Hawaiian culture and stuff like that. And Aaron has certainly talked about how it has become it's gotten better, but it's been really difficult to get AI that actually sounds like people from Perth, Australia, which, by the way, don't sound like people I am sure from Sydney, Australia, despite it sounding the same maybe to me, you know, the same way that, you know, Georgia and Alabama just don't sound the same and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's a big deal. I think it has a lot of potential. And I will just say from my personal opinion, this is just my opinion, I think it's going to get there. My fear is only that how long does it take to get there and what damage might it do on its path to getting there? So how far away are we is really what scares me, not that we won't get there or that we won't have AIs that are quickly able to pivot into other voices to ensure that not only are in business, but that our children are hearing voices that are actually representative of themselves and their culture and ethnicity and are able to hear that being reflected back to them so that as they are using these amazing AI tools, that they in fact hear themselves and are not maybe limited by what they feel is possible. So I think it'll get there. I just worry about how quickly or what priority where is it on the shelf of priorities for Google? That part I don't know, or any of the major tools.
I think there is information out about that. That is, they're functioning like an independent team within Google. And so this is actually moving faster in terms of Google time and more along the startup timeline. One of the last thing I want to say is this is a multimodal interaction because that's what Google's models are, right? All of the Gemini models are native multimodal, but that's not like right now. You can add a YouTube transcript. It's very likely pulling from the text. You can add a YouTube link, a link to a YouTube video. That's what I want to say. But it's very likely pulling from the YouTube transcript, right? Because that's just a shortcut, much easier to do it based on the text. But you can upload direct audio files. So one of the use cases that I saw was a business person talking about that they take walks on a regular basis and they record voice notes when they're walking, right? I have this idea. They simply upload those audio files, which if you're doing voice notes on your iPhone, now you can get transcripts. So you could just upload the transcript, but they're uploading the audio files and then getting feedback and having a conversation with the thoughts they had while they were walking, right? Like that kind of use case. How many of us have like voice notes that are just, they sit on the phone to die when you upgrade to the next model. But like that kind of stuff. Oh, and most of you know my favorite use case for AI is surfacing your own brilliance and making it actionable for you. And this is that's part of why I'm so excited about this.
And also what you're saying, Beth, I can hear that this is what you're saying. So I'm just going to, add to this is you're saying I should take all the voicemails from my wife and put them in there so that when she says to me, I told you that, I can say, but you didn't, because I have NotebookLM and it does not reference that at any given time.
Send her to the podcast. Send her to the podcast and be like, hey, I want you to listen to this.
Yes. Listen to the summary of these two Midwestern voices, and it will clearly show, Your Honor, that I was never told about that thing we were doing on Friday, nor did I know that I had to be there. So I did, listen, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Beth, but I feel like you were clearly saying this is how you're saying to use it with the voice method. So, obviously. All right, listen, unless there's anything else to add, here's I think this sort of the takeaway, and you guys add yours really quick to it as well. Look, it's a really powerful tool. I'm looking at it right now on my screen. You can get anything you create. You can put lots of documents in there, then get FAQs, study guides, table of contents, timelines, briefing docs. Those are right out of the box. Then, of course, we've just talked about the voice side of it. But put all that aside, its original part that it had was just that you could simply ask questions against documents. It was an easy, RAG system that you could go to and ask questions against documents, and it's phenomenal for that. Now you're able to do even more with like directly giving it a YouTube, and it'll pull the transcript or YouTube link, and it'll pull the transcript. It'll probably get better over time as well with more features and functionality. So is NotebookLM something you should definitely have in your tech stack? 1,000%, because it's free. I mean, there's just ways that you could probably be using it with your business. Jyunmi said internally, it's an amazing tool. Maybe externally, but probably internally, just because there's less fear there, right? If it's not exactly right or whatever, you're dealing with it as an internal tool. There's a bit of a barrier there. But regardless, hopefully you've gotten 5, 6, 7 different ways that you can use it just on this show that you weren't thinking about, from long walks on the beach to proving your wife wrong. I mean, whatever you want to do. I'm just saying there's options out there. Any other last thoughts, guys, before we wrap it up for the week? Nope. I see shaking heads. Okay. I always love that because like people can't, like if they're listening on Spotify, they're just like nothing. No, but I'm seeing shaking heads. So I'm telling you that everybody is good, even if you can't hear them. So we'll wrap it up for the week. Thank you to everybody in the comments. I have lots of people laughing at the wife thing. Yeah, well, maybe my wife will listen to this episode. We'll see. But that'll be for this week. Next week, starting on Monday, hey, you hopefully won't see any real difference, but we are officially switching over from StreamYard to Restream. So we're excited about that. That means we will have new intro music because we're not going to take this one with us. So look out on Monday for maybe a slightly different feel to our show, but that's because we are growing and moving onwards and upwards, and we need to move to a new platform that supports all the amazing, wonderful things that we have planned for this show. So that's coming up on it is Friday. That's coming up on Monday. I hope everybody has a great weekend. And until then, we will see you guys. Have a good one. Last time you see the splash screen and music. Enjoy it.
Thanksgiving to all Canadians.
Oh, there you go. Happy Thanksgiving.
Aloha. I feel like we should all sing to this on the way out. Na, 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 na.